Alright, this is a very quick tutorial on how to do spin stabilization for early orbital craft. Spin stabilization works great on suborbital craft, but you can also use it on a final unguided stage of an orbital craft. And I've seen a lot of people on the subreddit asking like, oh, well, if it's unguided, how do you do that? How to make sure it's pointing in the right direction. So this is basically how you do it. So this is my final stage. It's kind of tall because it's got these tanks so I could stuff stuff into them. I believe it's full of sounding stuff right now because I use these for downrange stuff at one point. But obviously you can also fill them with comsat payload, whatever. So the most important thing here is you notice these little side boosters, the spin motors. So I have these four. They can help provide ullage or also just kick them away from this stage while the RSS is still firing, just so I don't have to deactivate it. And these four are organized right around the center of gravity or center of mass right here. You do have to be very meticulous when placing these. Try to use the VAB as, or vehicle semi building, as a little bit of a backdrop to see if you're level or not, and try to get them right on there. Right below that we have a decoupler, obviously, and then I have this blue avionics, and then I have a red decoupler right underneath that. And this RCS, it's overloaded as hell. There's a lot of it, but that's just so that, well, it didn't save me Delta V not to have it there, so it's just chock full of it for all the orienting I could ever need, basically. Anyways, we're going to simulate this. My career has progressed far beyond this in this current run, so I don't even know if I have the launch complex required to launch this thing anymore, but we can certainly simulate it and show you how it works. So we're not using PVG for old stuff. It wouldn't really work that well. We're using a classic ascent profile. I've got it set up with a turn starting at 2.5 kilometers, ends at 150 kilometers, which is probably higher than I need it to be for this one. I think I'd usually set this to 100 if I wanted a lower periapsis, but I don't remember what the last mission I ran with an actual classic ascent profile, and it's got a 40% turn shape, which, I don't know, it's probably unaggressive if anything. I just tacked an extra 0 onto here for my normal PVG height of 160 kilometers, so now it's set to 1,600 kilometers. That's just to make sure it doesn't turn off. We are going to begin time warping, just to speed this up. And this was yes, this is a little bit of an over-designed craft. This did everything that I needed, all the way from 3,000 kilometers downrange to anything short of geostationary or more NEO orbits. I believe that was the first thing it was actually incapable of doing. And I just did that because launch complexes annoy me. Unlocking parts was a lot. So it seemed like the most efficient thing to do is go straight from a suborbital launch complex, my very first one, straight to this thing. And it seems to have worked out. So once I get my second stage loose, I'm going to actually use MechJeb to just create a node and align to it for circularizing. I'm not sure how easy that will be able to make out if you're not in HD. Like I said, I have a ton of RCS. I'm just going to leave it going, and we're going to time warp around until it's time to actually fire this. Even though I'm using MechJeb to make the node, I'm going to fire this for its full 2 minutes, so I'm not going to use MechJeb to actually execute the node. On some designs, if I don't have RCS for ullage, I'll create a stage where I fire these, and usually the spin motor's on the same one, and a second stage, or just not hitting the Z button to maximize throttle until it's already begun to go. But if you set it up as 2 stages and basically just start smacking the spacebar as fast as possible, you're basically guaranteed to get the ullage to work right. Alright, so we've got about 15 seconds until I fire the final stage. Just to get everything ironed out and kind of like nice and stable, I'm going to come out of time warp and give it a little bit of time. And like I said, these extra little boosts should make it so that the this stage won't like bump into it as soon as we bump off. So we're nice and lined up, and we're going to activate it. Yeah, see, it pushed us away. Well, we're actually starting out with quite a bit of wobble, so that might be a problem. But as you can see, we've run out of avionics. We have nothing left. We just have a science core. This is more wobble than is standard for this, because the little boosters have a little bit of variance here. You can have some issues with them, but usually with 4 of them, even if I've had one of these fail and still been fine. But if you have a really long burn like this one, a 2-minute long burn, well, things can be rough. If you have a shorter one, like a 30-second one, you actually have a lot of tolerance in these things as far as how long they fire and how much fuel they use, and if one of them fails completely. I will say the wobbles seem to be made worse by time warp. Sometimes I can get away with it, sometimes I can't. With how much is wobbling already, I just really don't want to try. I also have like a magnetometer boom on here. Kind of hit and miss with that as well. I'm like 95% sure that the game isn't smart enough to realize that if I extend it, that these, we're changing the radial momentum of this thing, or rotational momentum, whatever. But why risk it, So we're about halfway through. We're getting some decent wobble, but we should be fine. This thing is, like I said, over-engineered for especially something like this. Um, this should get us somewhere between like 5 and 6 megameters. Even with this amount of wobble, I think we're going to get safely to 4 or 5 at the very least. Yeah, I forgot. I should have changed the camera to free before, but if you don't do it before it starts spinning, when you go orbital and it goes to the orbital cam from free cam, you're going to have that same effect with the camera. We are now in orbit, and we're still going. So if I targeted a lower end altitude, I think I've done this as low as like maybe 140 kilometers and gotten 6-7 megameters out of it maybe. As you can see, we're getting a pretty good wobble this time around. I've had this go on this exact same craft with like no wobble at the end of it, so there is a little bit of variance here. But in exchange for saving a ton of mass and trying to be able to steer this thing, I think it's a decent trade-off. So let's see. Vessel info. So this is just under a ton, and so we've saved all the avionics of having to control 1 ton, and because early stuff can't be hibernated, but this has like science cores have like no power, we've saved a lot of power too. So this thing will just run and do science experiments for a pretty long time. Anyways, thanks for watching.